Hey everyone, welcome to the Heartfelt Homes Real Estate Show, where we cover all things related to Greater Boston real estate investing. On today's show, we have our good friends Nate and Danielle Gianino, a husband and wife real estate investment team. Throughout the course of the discussion, we're going to talk about why Nate and Danielle got into real estate investing, how they took action on their first deal, how they've grown their portfolio to 11 units or 11 doors in their first year, and how the coronavirus has impacted their ongoing projects and their search for more. I really enjoyed this conversation. I always love hearing about Nate and Danielle's story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And without further ado, let's welcome Nate and Danielle to the show. Welcome to the show, Nate and Danielle. It's good to have you guys on. Local real estate investors from the Boston area. It's good to have you guys on. We've really enjoyed getting to know you guys and looking forward to the conversation. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Really excited about this.
Absolutely. How are you guys holding up in quarantine life?
I think the background probably tells it all, right? So we got 3 little kids. They're running amok downstairs. So we've had to relegate our office space, which is kind of off the living room, up here to the bedroom for the last several weeks, and that's where we're beaming from today. So
nice.
Welcome to our home.
Yeah, thanks for. Yeah, I know this is kind of strange time, so thank you guys for making the time to come on today and talk to us. So if you could, let's start with a little bit about your background around your why and how you got into real estate investing.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start and Danielle will continue and we'll go from
sure,
there.
I'll jump in at some
point.
Awesome.
We, we're in our mid-30s. We are kind of career corporate America, climbing the corporate ladder type employees. We have operated kind of on the outskirts of real estate investing, I guess you'd call it, for the last 10 years or so. We bought this house. We knew we wanted to add value into it, so we renovated it. We saw that value come on the back end during a reappraisal and a refinancing. So, we knew we've always known there's something to this real estate industry and an opportunity to make some money and build some wealth. But it wasn't until we welcomed our third baby to the family, which was January of 2019, that we both kind of had this moment of, man, is this corporate grind going to be the next 25, 30 years while we raise the kids and the family and kind of build our lives together? And I think we could both honestly say that the unanimous answer to that question was no. And then that's where we pivoted, really.
Yeah, we were building a great life together. I think that, we were really happy, but it felt busy. It felt chaotic and rushed at times. Mm-hmm. We were, I was at that time commuting into Boston. I was getting up and leaving the house by 7 a.m., not coming back till 7 p.m. Nate was doing something very similar. So, we were busy with our careers and we had 2 young kids at the time where, we wanted to spend more time with them. And when we did it, we realized we want more of this. But when we were at work too, we were like, well, it's good too to have money and be successful. And it was a lot. I don't know if that resonates with you, Todd. I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, no, it's obviously we've talked about this, offline before, and this is why I love your story so much, because it's so similar to what Jess and I's story is. And so it sounds like really a financial independence play is kind of what brought you to real estate, more than maybe a professional shift or a career shift. This is very much a passive income, financial independence story for you guys.
Yep, we wanted more time. Yep, we wanted more time with our kids and to do the things that we want to in life, but we didn't want to not have money. So yes, it's very much, passive income. We decided at that point to set some goals to build cash flow. It was all about cash flow for us. So how can we replace our income in a different way?
Awesome. Well, I look forward to getting into the story. Thanks for the quick overview. Let's start with let's start back to, you mentioned the house that you're living in now, and you mentioned that maybe that was kind of your first foray into real estate investing through doing some, maybe inadvertently or by accident, but doing a little work. So maybe start there with what has that project looked like, and then ultimately how did you make that shift into more of formal kind of investing, and we can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so our primary residence, which is where we are right now, and where we've been since 2008. And it's essentially been a two-phase approach to building up the property that we live in now. The first project started essentially right at closing. As soon as we gained entrance to the property, we spent 7.5 months on nights and weekends, doing a lot of the work ourselves, but renovating the majority of the primary living space here at the house. And that worked out really great for us as, first newlyweds, and great little starter home for us. It was a old farmhouse that we renovated and made it a lot more modern at the time. And then the kids started coming, and we realized that the location that we invested in was a place that we could see ourselves living for the next 20, 30 years. It could be our forever home. And as soon as we made that decision, as soon as we came to that realization, we said, well, let's invest a little bit more into it and expand on the footprint a little bit, and make it a home that we could see ourselves growing old in, and raising a family in. So that kind of came to the second phase, which was major renovation. Addition, chopping the roof off, going up with it, and making a really unique little floor plan downstairs and upstairs.
Nice.
So was
that your first foray into construction and renovations and managing that type of project?
Yeah, I think for us as a couple, absolutely yes. When I was in high school and college, I spent a number of years framing custom homes with a builder, actually out in Newton, Mass. And that was my first foray into knowing my way around and getting to know my way around a work site, understanding how contractors and subcontractors interact, how they work together, how they butt heads sometimes. So I had a pretty good kind of early on exposure into real estate, but on the custom home building side, which I think helped us as we managed the project here at the house.
Awesome. And then so if I'm hearing you right, so then that project kind of wrapped. You guys saw the value in kind of in what real estate could bring. Obviously, family life was evolving. And then there was a shift. There was a shift to we want to go do more of this, maybe outside of the primary residence. And so, how did you get there, and what was that next? How did you get your kind of why and the vision around we want to go do more of this? And then, how did you select what you were going to go focus on?
So when baby number 3 came and I was on maternity leave, it gave us a chance to breathe a little bit, right? We weren't commuting every day. We were, we had this time together as a family, and it, as it often does when babies come, it gives you perspective, right? So at that time, we just had that moment where we said, all right, do we want to continue to move forward with this life and the direction we're going in? Which, by the way, with baby number 3 will make it even busier and more chaotic. Or is it time to seriously start thinking about something else? So it was during those months that we started, flirting with the idea a little bit more. We got smarter on the subject, right? So we started reading, I think like most other folks in investing, listening to, podcasts, specifically BiggerPockets, and started running numbers on deals and doing some analysis. But even at that point, it wasn't our like aha moment. At that point, it was just something else that we added to our list. And I'm a list person, and like every day I get up and I do my list, and the last thing on that list I will remember is run some numbers on some properties. And that happened for a few weeks. And I just had this moment and I told Nate, I go, if that's always the last thing, we're never going to get to it, because I never get to the last thing on my list. So every day I write my list again, and it was the last thing there. And if we were going to continue with this, with this routine, then it would always be an idea, but we would never execute against it. So I think we both said, if it's the first thing, if it's the one thing we want to do, it has to be our priority. So we started making some changes. We started really tapping into our network. We were fortunate to have some folks in our life that had done real estate investing before. So at that point, when we could still have people over, we'd have some coffee chats and pull up our spreadsheets. And really, this one individual, Dave, was so helpful and so willing to teach us. We said, well, this is what we think, and based off of this, is this a good deal? And he was just so patient and had us look at things through a different lens. So through his guidance, and again, through continuing to get smarter, through various resources, we started fine-tuning the business model that we wanted to go after. And then it was all about trying to find our first deal, right?
Nice.
That was, I think, the process. And the other thing I would add to that is, once we made that shift and we said, all right, this is going to be our number one priority, Nate started doing a really cool thing, which I didn't realize at the time because I'm more conservative, but he started telling a lot of people about this new plan. And I'm here saying, we haven't done anything yet. Like, why are you telling people?
Accountability, the accountability factor. That's great.
Yeah, I was like, why are you telling people that? Like, we're not even, like, what are you doing? But honestly, looking back, because he started like putting that out into the universe, if you will, that's really when the magic happened, because we were ready. We had a business model. And then, because he was able to tell a few people or whatever in the network, people like put the two together. And that's when we started, that's when things started to scale a little bit. So it was good.
That's awesome. And you just hit upon so many things there that I want to talk about. Because this is why I love your story so much, because I think it resonates with so many people. So, there's so many folks that go on BiggerPockets forums or go to meetups and learn and are understanding kind of the theories of real estate investing, but then hesitate to take that action step and that next step. And so that's where I'd really like to, take the rest of the conversation, is how to cross over from kind of theory and wanting to do it, the desire to do it, and then taking that first step. And then you also mentioned, a mentor, a potential mentor in this gentleman, Dave, being clear on your goals. I think another thing that we see a lot of is scattered, right? It's shiny object syndrome. Oh, that looks good, but not really being clear on the why and what my goals are, and potentially even what niche within real estate investing I want to choose and go become a master on. So you just in that couple of minutes, you just touched upon so many important things. So, okay. So you kind of read up on got knowledgeable on the subject. You had this good friend and mentor that was able to kind of guide you and provide some expertise in coaching. And then what happened? How'd you get into you figured out your kind of business plan, started telling folks about it, and then what's the next step? Where'd you go from there?
Yeah, so we were in the grind of running numbers. We were in the grind of analyzing deals, all different types of deals, duplexes, triplexes, quads, up to 5 to 9 to 15 family apartment buildings. And what you learn a lot of stuff along the way as you're building up your own kind of knowledge base around real estate investing. And you'll hear experts from every single asset class telling you why they think that particular asset class is the best one to invest in. And I think what we did is we kind of kept our minds open. We said, listen, we could build a business that starts out with a bunch of duplexes, maybe even single families, and then build it up from there. But honestly, what really happened, Todd, was we were presented with an opportunity. It was an off-market deal that we got in front of us because of the network we started to build through networking. And We jumped on it. The first day we learned about it that morning. We were there looking at it that afternoon, and then a day or two later, we made an offer on it. And looking back on it, it was that type of kind of quick execution that we were building up to be able to manage through, right? So we may not have been able to execute on that deal, 5 months prior, 3 months prior, because we may not have known, okay, what should we do? What should we offer? What should we, and then that's where you delay. And that's what you were talking about earlier, is like, sometimes you're not confident enough to make certain decisions. So we were done with the analyzing part of our knowledge, and we were ready to see the deal for what it was, execute on it, put an offer in, and lucky enough to get it accepted, and it became our first deal. And we're happy to jump into what that looks like.
Yeah, that would be great. So you just to summarize that, you had put the reps in, you had the knowledge, you had the practice, and that ultimately gave you the confidence so that when a deal came across your desk, so to speak, you acted on it. And speed is everything in this game, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is the differentiator. Towards the end, I'll ask you for a recommendation of, for a new investor. And I think that's a great one right there, is, having the confidence. You've run the numbers, you've run 100 or 200 deals. You have as much knowledge as you can possibly have at that point in time. The next step is action. And it sounds like you guys were just, ready to pull the trigger when that came across your desk. So that's awesome.
And I want to be clear, is like, even at that point, maybe we were 3, 4, 5 months in, we were by no means experts, and we didn't think we were, right? So we knew that there was still a lot to learn, even getting into that first property. But if we were to go into it thinking, well, we need to know everything about everything, we absolutely wouldn't have that property, and we probably wouldn't even have a portfolio right now that we're.
Yeah, and that was just step one, right? Well, there was many steps that happened before that, but it was like, okay, offer the deal, get the deal, and then we didn't even realize like all the work ahead, right? Which was like, okay, property manager, working with the banks, like all of that. So, for beginners, it's just, don't look too far out on the horizon. I mean, yes, you can do that, and you should like know the steps, but along the way, it's okay to learn as you go.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably healthier that way, I think.
Yeah. And I think to your point, like, there are certain things you won't learn until you get, you can read about them, right? But like, there's only so much knowledge you can gain before you ever do a deal. And then once you do that deal, it unlocks this whole next set of things that you now need to go, learn about. And yeah, it's kind of a constantly evolving, learning experience. So that's fantastic. So let's get into the actual deal, right? So this off-market deal comes across your desk. You guys look at it, run the numbers, put an offer in 1 or 2 days later. What type of building was it? What type of project was it? Value add, turnkey? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. It was a 6-unit in Manchester, New Hampshire. I think it was turnkey in the sense it wasn't a burr or anything like that. The units were in really good shape. I think if we, decided to go in and do a few cosmetic updates here or there, we could raise the value, but there was really no need to do that. What we found is, if a tenant had left, because we inherited all the tenants. So as a tenant turned over, we would work closely with our property manager and say, hey, like, do you think there's any updates we need to do? We're actually willing to do that. And one of the great things about inheriting the tenants as we did is they naturally had rents that were under market. So we were going in, turning over tenants and increasing their rent, in some cases, $250 a month without doing any repairs. It was just one of those value adds. Yeah, we just had some folks that were under market. So so that's what it looked like. I think the unique thing for us was what is it called? One plus or one deluxe. So it was 1-bedroom units. And then they had this other room, which didn't have a closet. So I don't think you could officially call it a bedroom, but it was a really decent sized room that when we went to, tour the building, some were using as offices or extra storage or things like that. So if we need to at some point, while it's a small room, I think we could put a closet on there and maybe, and market it as a 2-bedroom, or we could just have a really great advantage as a 1-bedroom because we have this extra room there. So that was something that was a little bit of a differentiator too that we liked. So.
Nice. That's awesome. So, so 6-unit building, Manchester, New Hampshire. Were you married to Manchester, or were you was that the market that you were looking in, or was that just because that happened to be where that building was? What brought you up there?
Well, I think what brought us up there was we were trying very hard to find more local deals to us. So we live in Woburn, and it's, within the Boston, I guess.
Greater Boston.
Greater Boston.
95 belt. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's expensive. So when we started, the process that we went through running the numbers is we would run numbers in Woburn and we would run numbers in, our local towns, and they didn't work. So we started targeting a couple different markets where the numbers naturally worked a little bit better. And Manchester was one of them. So it wasn't totally by chance. It was something that we had been looking at. And because of that, and again, because we put it out there, that's why it came across our desk.
Got it. Awesome. So there was some criteria there that ultimately that's how it came to you. Awesome. Yeah. Nice. So a building that was, almost turnkey, right? You didn't have to do anything. It wasn't any major renovations. And how long have you had this place?
It'll be a year on May 5th, actually. I think we closed on May 5th.
Okay. Oh, coming up on a year, almost 1 year. Awesome. So how is it? I mean, so that being kind of the first building, especially a medium-sized multifamily building, and then as we were talking about, kind of taking that action opens up a new chapter of learning and figuring things out. How has this building? Has it gone to plan? Has there been positives that you didn't foresee? Have there been kind of negatives or challenges that you hadn't necessarily anticipated? What has that first year looked like?
Yeah, the first year for this one has been relatively by the books, I would say. We had early on put together what we refer to as our performance improvement plan for the property. And it's essentially, and I've shared it with you, Todd, it's essentially a unit by unit breakdown of current state rent and what a market rent might look like or would look like for each and every unit, and then what we would need to do in terms of investment or property management approach to make each unit eventually get up to market rent and maybe push the limits of market rent. So we knew what a model, we basically built that model to see how could this property perform in our portfolio as a cash flowing value add asset. Even though we bought it as turnkey, we knew there was value add opportunity within it, primarily with the move in the rents up closer to market. And although we've run into some delays in tenant turnover or filling vacant units, especially over the last few months, it's been a really kind of unforeseen time in the market. So turning over a unit to a new tenant has been a little bit more challenging, but I think everybody's feeling that pinch. Every investor out there who's trying to turn over units or bring in new tenants to their properties has found it a little bit more difficult than it had been historically. Other than that, I think the plan is going to plan. We haven't seen or felt any major disruption. You get your run-of-the-mill, tenant doesn't realize that they actually owe their last month's rent, and they drop off the keys and take off without paying their last month's rent, things of that nature. But that's all stuff that we work closely with our property manager on, and manage those situations as they come, and make sure that within our new lease structure, all that stuff is outlined and detailed pretty clearly to set the expectations with the tenants. Because if the tenants don't have expectations, they're going to go off of their own. They're going to go off of their own, mindset and do things maybe outside the the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah, another thing I would add is the relationship with the property manager. So I think because we both come from the corporate world, like communication to us is like number one. And I think what we didn't realize was the property manager we went with, fantastic company, but a lot of their portfolio, I think, are just like investors that have been doing this for a while and are much more hands off. So then we come along and we are a little just, we're learning. It's our first time, and we made this very clear up front. So just like how to map out what that communication like looks like, how, often should we be communicating, things that other investors may not care about. Like if a tenant provides their notice, at first we weren't getting notified of that, and that just wasn't part of their process. Like, oh, that's normal. It's just a normal, and we've already put it on the market and so on and so forth. And we're like, wait, like we feel like that's something that we probably want to know about. So like setting those expectations has been, something that I think we assumed was going to happen. And with maybe some property managers, that's the right assumption. But with ours particular, defining what that relationship looks like and how it's going to be managed was something that we had to work on.
Yeah, that resonates with me a big time. We have some of the same conversations with our property managers as well. You mentioned a plan, a performance improvement plan. How important, and you also mentioned that it maybe hasn't gone exactly as it was planned. So, how important do you think for a new investor who really wants to pull the trigger on, whether it's a live-in duplex house hack, whether it's a multifamily building, or even something, 20 or larger units, how important is that plan in your opinion? And then how important is, or unimportant is, some flexibility or allowance for the plan to kind of change over time?
Yep. I'll take a stab at that, and then Danielle, I'm sure, will add to it. When you're building a real estate portfolio, what we've realized is building the portfolio in and of itself is a business venture, right? So as real estate investors, we're building a business, which is essentially building a portfolio. But within the portfolio, every single asset that you acquire, whether it's a single family home or a multifamily apartment building, we look at as being its own little business in and of itself, right? So if we look at that 6-unit apartment building in Manchester, New Hampshire, being kind of a business in and of itself, how it performs as an asset, that's essentially the framework that we use to put that performance plan together. And in order for us to execute against getting that asset performing the way we expect it to, that plan, that unit by unit breakdown of both, rent, expenses, et cetera, broken out in fine detail for us, was really the way that we naturally progressed at, okay, to get to end future state, ideal future state, what are the steps that we need to take to get there? And that performance improvement plan maps that out for us.
Anything you want to add, Danielle? What about the fluidity of the plan? Is it how rigid to the plan should folks be, or as you get new data points, like allowing for that plan to change a little bit? Do you think that's important, or do you think that's that's something that folks shouldn't do?
I think it's required to be agile. I mean, look at the situation we're in right now. Our plan was to, turn over tenants within, 30 days, get it rented. Like, that's not life, right? So yeah, well, I think it's important to go into everything and have it mapped out and have a plan to build in, the what if scenario, at least for us, is a must. And these are longer term assets for us too. These are buy and hold. We're not trying to do like a flip or anything. So we understand that, like, when we bought it, we knew that it was a good investment at that time. So, and the numbers worked. So any like improvement that we do is more icing on the cake. I think it's important, if you go back and and understand like why you bought the asset, right? So if the only reason we bought the asset was because the numbers didn't work at that time, but in executing on our plan is a must in order to make our money work for us, then we probably would have looked at this through a different lens. So each investment, I think, is going to have its own set of like criteria and importance as far as like, can you have flexibility, or in order to make this work, like, do I need to be more rigid on the plan?
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
And Todd, I'll add maybe just a quick example. So to the point around being kind of flexible and agile with a plan, as we designed the plan originally, we expected to execute the plan ourselves, right? Like we were going to be the ones to drive those performance improvement initiatives based on how we mapped out unit by unit priorities, right? So we had 1 through 6. And it was really all based on when are the current leases set to expire. What you realize as you start to get into this business a little bit more is, tenants can do a lot of things to change that list of priorities, right? Some tenants can request to break lease early. Some tenants can do things that will, want us to expedite turning that unit over because maybe they stop paying rent and you start to go through an eviction cycle, things of that nature. So the nature of managing a multifamily property or any asset in real estate has its dynamics that will force you to reconsider what those priorities are, and then adjust your plan accordingly. And that happened. I mean, if we looked at the plan when we originally put it together and where it is now, it's all shuffled around.
I keep thinking about this building in particular. In my opinion, the best unit is like grossly under market. Like it is insane what this person is paying. I don't know if they had some sort of side deal with the past owner. Like I have no idea what's happening, but like in my eyes, it was like, that is 100% our number one priority. Like this is the best unit we could get, maybe $300 more a month just by turning this thing over. So going into it, that was number one, but so many other things have happened with the other units. So we had to sit back and do some math and say, all right, well, having this unit, another unit vacant for 2 months is, we need to address that first rather than, increasing this person's rent, whatever. So this person is still a year later in the apartment at that low rate, just because all these other priorities like came up. So I laughed.
You're saving the best for last. You still have you still have your best opportunity in front of you. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So.
I would like to talk a little bit about, maybe before we go this way, a little bit about how coronavirus has impacted your plan and the operations of this building. But also there's another building, right? So there's another project. So, kind of quickly, how, once you stabilized this property a year ago, or, you took it, you acquired the building a year ago, how quickly was it until you felt stabilized on that project, on that property, and said, wow, we want more, right? And how quickly was it until you found your second deal?
For this one, the 6 unit, it was essentially right away. After we got in, about 2 months in, we realized that the property in and of itself was stable. Again, it was a little bit more of a turnkey than I think what a lot of investors are looking for. But I think it was a good way for us to get our feet wet without too much turmoil right off the bat. And I think we realized like a month or two in, we're ready to potentially turn on another deal. And that's essentially what happened. Within 4 months, we got another property in the Manchester market, a 5-unit this time, under contract. And we ended up closing on that one in September of 2019. So within I don't know, 5 or 6 month period, we went from 0 properties, 0 units to 2 properties and 11 total units in our portfolio. And that's what our portfolio still looks like today. So we've taken a little bit of a hiatus in terms of acquiring new assets, but we focused 80% of our energy in the business right now at improving both of those properties and stabilizing them and or improving them.
Awesome. 11 doors in a year is nothing to sneeze at. So that's an awesome first year. And
especially when you set out with the goal of, hey, let's get into maybe like one duplex or maybe one triplex. That was our original goal. And then I think what we realized is, you get yourself out there and you start talking to more people, networking, and as the opportunities come, do your best to take advantage of them any way you can. That's what we did.
Yeah. I'm sitting here and laughing because if it was up to me, or I think both of us, we'd have so many more right now, right? So once you get that bug and once you see, the formula working and that, you can do this, I want more properties, but what we got to figure out now is how to keep the funnel full. And our last property was on MLS, and we were able to negotiate a pretty good deal, so it made sense. But we're hungry for off-market deals. We want to keep looking at we want to do whatever we can to keep it moving. So
yeah. And do you attribute that to your goal, like having those goals, right? Having that forward-looking kind of business plan and those goals to keep you kind of always looking at the next step? How important is that?
I think so. When we set out, we said, all right, let's, maybe it was our corporate background, like what's our 5-year goal,
Right. Yeah.
And it was to, replace at least my income at that time. And for one of us to be full-time, like, out of the corporate world. So that's still our goal. So we have 4 years now to execute on that. And hopefully we go above and beyond that. And would love to come back on the podcast at that time to tell you what our journey has been.
That would be phenomenal.
Yeah. So yep, we our eyes on the prize for sure. And I think because of that, we realize how important it is to keep this thing going.
Yeah. That's why I love your story so much, right? It's grounded in a multi-year plan, a path to that plan. What I've learned from you two is just, be diligent about your numbers. Like, as hungry as you are for deals, there's things to go buy, right? You could go buy something, right? But you have specific criteria. The numbers need to work. The numbers need to align with your 5-year goal. And if they don't, what I'm seeing from you is, or hearing from you is, you're not willing to make concessions that take away from your path towards that goal. Having that criteria is really important.
They know, right? It's hard because you could maybe make it work, and there'd be a lot of ifs or a lot of things that have to go right in order for you to get maybe your bare minimum on what you consider acceptable. So it's like having the discipline, which this is still the beginning of our journey, so we're still working on this, but having the discipline to say no, and having the faith to say there'll be a better one to come, like in the future. So he's more like, there's going to be more, and I know that, but sometimes I'm like, I know, just let's do it. Let's get there. Yeah. So we're both still very excited for to have those right deals hit our plate. But when they do, we will 100% execute. We're ready.
Be ready to go. Yeah. That's awesome. And it sounds like you both bring, a unique perspective to the table, but also alignment around those goals. So it sounds like a great partnership and really good alignment towards your end goals. So that's great. How does so coronavirus, right? Coronavirus comes around early this year. You're looking for more properties. You've got 11 doors that you're managing, for a year or less. How has this new environment impacted you? What have you learned from it? And how do you think a new real estate investor who maybe is just getting ready to do their first deal, or is thinking about doing their first deal, what do you recommend they be mindful of in this situation?
Yeah, I think for us, the brakes have been pumped probably a little bit more than I think we anticipated in terms of our progression into managing a funnel and running numbers and being interested and excited about new opportunities. And I think that's a couple of things have happened for us personally. Like, work for both of us has gotten a lot busier since coronavirus hit. So there's been a little bit less time for us to dedicate to our real estate business. But I also think that, we've been listening and hearing a lot of great insight from industry experts, folks that have a lot more experience than we do. John Bombachi, for example, is a guest that you had on the podcast. He's been a real kind of mentor for us in insights that he brings to the table about what's happening in today's environment and how he can compare that to experiences that he has and his team have had in years past is invaluable because we weren't around in 2008, 2009 as real estate investors. We keep hearing stories about how it decimated half of investors, and it made the other half really, really wealthy, depending on what side of the real estate spectrum you were operating in. And can't yet compare this to 2008, 2009, but there are similarities. So we've kind of taken a position of being kind of in a wait and see mode. The market could rebound and could just maintain its upward trajectory, just like it was in the winter, fall and into the winter. And if that happens, then we'll know, we'll know the landscape that we're operating in once we're back to normal, because that's all we've known is what the market's been like the last year and a half. If it changes in some sort of dramatic way, then we'll adjust accordingly. And we're, like I said, just right now, kind of trying to read the tea leaves as best as possible and taking the advice that folks have to share. And podcasts like this, Todd, kind of bringing them up as like a grassroots effort to getting information out there is exactly the type of content that we're going to be seeking out more and more. So thank you, by the way. It's a delayed thank you to put this thing together. But yeah, this type of content and interaction that folks are still having, even though we've run out of our in-person meetup opportunities, which, as Danielle can attest, I love them. I can't get enough of them, and I really missed them when they went away. This type of dynamic is a great way to replace some of that.
Yeah, Danielle, anything to add?
I would just say from the investor, we have 2 properties now, right? And we are seeing some tenant turnover, and it's just taken a little bit longer to fill those. So that's the direct impact that we're feeling for our current business. I think Nate covered maybe forward-looking stuff. And this is just a side note, but I'm amazed at the shift that the real estate agents and property managers have had to take, how they had to just pivot and things are virtual. It's really amazing to me that the whole industry it's still plugging along. It's still moving forward, and people just need to be creative as far as how to do it. I just think that's awesome.
I think that's such an important point, right? Shifting for everybody, right? Whether it's Nate, your point about our physical meetups have gone away. And so, you look at what John's done with weekly virtual meetups, right? A place for people to come together, newbies, experienced investors, agents, lenders, everybody coming together in a virtual meetup, even in this time of quarantine, right? It still provides an outlet for networking. As I've told you, Jess and I feel like, building our network is really important to us. And so having these types of conversations and then paying it forward by sharing the conversation. So hopefully, even if one person hears the conversation and takes that next step or reaches out and has a conversation that they otherwise wouldn't have had, that's why we're doing this, right? That's the most important thing. And I think right now there's this appetite for folks to find information, whether it be in passive mediums like a podcast or an active medium like a meetup. But this is now an opportunity for people to, even if they're not out buying, talk to people, network with folks, learn from other people that are ahead of us, is really important. And shifting, like you were saying, Danielle, it's remarkable the shift that we've seen in how houses are getting listed and how buyers and sellers are coming together. And now we see of this last week, we're seeing data that listings are coming back, and we're not even out of this, right? But I think what you're seeing that there's now a confidence that, oh yeah, we figured out how to still buy and sell a house in this market. So you're starting to see listing metrics come back, even before we're fully, back to, business as usual with the pandemic. So shifting, big thing.
Big thing. Yeah. And while Nate's saying, like, maybe the current state is still unclear as far as like the future and like all that stuff, I still think that, as these listings come back on, the market still, hopefully picks up. If the numbers work, the numbers work. Yeah. And if it's a buy and hold, the coronavirus shouldn't matter. If it's a 30-year investment and your numbers work today, if it goes up or down a little bit, like it still works for you. And like, if that worked for us, it helps us achieve our goal, right? If it produces cash flow for us, then I'm okay with that, because for me, that's what I set out to achieve.
Awesome. That is really, really good. Guys, it is always awesome to hear your story. I think it's a really motivational story, and one that a lot of people can learn from. What's one thing, we talked about a few themes today that folks, could take, the first step that somebody that's new to the game or wants to get into real estate investing can take. What's the one recommendation you have right now that if a newbie investor in the greater Boston area wants to take that next step, what's one recommendation you have?
I have one that I think will resonate not just with a newbie investor, but maybe even an experienced investor. And what we've learned in working with a number of different real estate agents over the last year and a half, I'd really highly recommend folks seek out real estate agents and real estate brokers that understand the mindset of an investor specifically. And I think that is a major differentiator between going out and trying to buy a single family residence that you're trying to live in versus seeking out an investment property. The vast majority of real estate agents out there are really, really good at helping to find a property that meets, certain criteria, but not necessarily understanding the investor's mindset. So seek out folks like John Mabachi and other real estate agents and brokers out there that are really trying to cater to and build a business around supporting the investment or the real estate investor community. Now more than ever is a great time to seek out those maybe alternative agents and brokers, especially if you don't feel like you're jiving with the one that you're working with right now. Probably a good time to pivot.
Yeah.
Awesome.
This is more of an observation. I don't know if it's a recommendation, but by going to some of these meetups and meeting you and Dave and John, like all of these people that we've now have in our lives and are helping us with our business, I'm just so amazed at how people in this industry, how much they're willing to help each other. So why it might be really scary for someone that doesn't feel like they know enough to even have a conversation with somebody about real estate investing. I still don't sometimes. I mean, I don't know. It's okay. Just have the conversation and be honest and talk about where you are in your journey and figure out what your goals are and your why and all of that. And people are good. People will help you. People, they want to help you. So just, it's okay to be vulnerable and to, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Just people have really helped us in our journey. So I would recommend the more that you can do that, meet people and get yourself out there. I think that it will come back tenfold.
Yeah, don't feel like you're doing it yourself. It doesn't have to be all on your shoulders to get into your first deal or your next deal. Don't put that burden on yourself.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. I think those are awesome recommendations. And as you guys probably know, even just having those conversations opens doors that you didn't even know were there, and you can be surprised after one conversation that, a new avenue or a new opportunity presents itself that you didn't even know about. So thank you for
fun, right?
And have fun, right? Yeah, exactly.
Be smart, have fun, make money. Like just
Yep.
you only do this once.
Keep the perspective. Yeah, keep the perspective. I think it's for, with all things in life, right? It's easy to fixate on one thing and then become so hyper focused on it that you lose going back to your why, right? Like take time to reflect on the why and maybe don't take it so seriously, and be diligent and critical, but not so serious that you don't have fun and can't enjoy networking and talking with folks. So awesome. And then last but not least, how can folks get in touch with you if they want to have a phone conversation or a conversation or hear more about your stories or just kind of otherwise network with you? How can folks reach out?
We joked about this prior to this because we don't have like a great website or anything like that. So very typical channels here. I have a Facebook page. I'm relatively active on LinkedIn. We both have BiggerPockets accounts. And Nate is a staple at the meetups that John puts on. So Pints and Properties, I think it's called. So pretty typical stuff.
Yep. Yeah, and a
Awesome.
Gmail account for our business. Gianino, it's our last name, Gianino, REI, Real Estate Investing, and at gmail.com.
Cool. And we'll link to all those links in the show notes so people have them. Nate and Danielle, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I look forward to having you back on in 4 years to hear all about the early retirement. So it's all about accountability. And now this is recorded. So 4 years you'll be back on, and I look forward to hearing that story. Thank you both for coming on and sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Todd, for having us.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Bye, guys.